Two pitchers that came into the season with potential high upside, but couldn't handle the pressure. We're going to be reviewing both of their 2022 seasons in this episode of the Locked Red Sox podcast.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast. And thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Massachusetts Powers Team Insider, Jake Ignaszewski, and here as always with my co-host, NESN's Lauren Willand. And I hope everybody is having a great Monday, despite, you're waking up, it's not Thanksgiving weekend anymore. I'm not able to wake up whenever I want. I hope, you had some great times with your families. You're able to eat a lot of food, watch some good football. But how was your Thanksgiving weekend, Lauren?
It was good. It was low key. I worked my normal week. So it was kind of just another week for me. And I have Mondays off. So it is nice to wake up whenever I want on Monday. But my friend she goes back to work today for the first time in 6 months because her maternity leave is over. So I'm trying not to complain too much, trying to go back to work after 2 days off when I'm like, 6 months, I'd be like, I'm never coming back after that.
Yeah, that's definitely tough to acclimate back to the work-life balance. And I had a great Thanksgiving, was able to spend a lot of time with family. It was nice to see, the Patriots make it very, very close on Thursday night. I know we're a baseball podcast, but that was a catch, 100% catch the goal line.
Yep.
100%. But it was definitely nice to have a much needed relaxing time, especially as the holidays continue to kick on and getting a little bit colder. If you're watching the video version, I got my Locked On beanie on, getting ready for the winter, getting ready for some snow. I don't know about you, but in my opinion, if it's going to be cold outside, might as well have white stuff on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't like the cold. And I try not to complain about it because I live here. I have lived here for 33 years and this is my doing. So I try not to complain too much about the cold, but the snow looks beautiful when it's on the ground, but removing it, trying to clear paths for my dog to make sure it's safe enough for her to get out there. She loves the snow. So that's the only major positive is that she will play in the snow for hours and it's really, really cute. But I would just prefer 65 degrees and sunny. But if it's going to be cold, there's no reason for it to be 12 degrees and no snow on the ground. Just put me out of my misery and just give me all of winter in one weekend.
It's always interesting with New England. You never know what you're going to get with the weather. And, there was 50 degrees, 2 days ago. It was really nice being outside. You didn't even need a coat or a sweatshirt. And then out of nowhere, it smacks you in the face with 30 degrees. But with two of these pitchers that we're going to be talking about today, it's sort of a metaphor for that. Started off sort of hot and then, just really iced out for the remainder of the season. We're going to be starting off with Kutter Crawford, who going into the season during spring training really opened a lot of eyes, helped him be able to get selected to the active roster on opening day for the Red Sox and sort of slide into that long reliever place. A lot of people didn't have very high expectations, but had optimism, I would say. And, he did have some stretches here or there out of the bullpen and also sometimes as a starter where he showed some flashes of being a good major league pitcher. But throughout the season, when you just look at the stats, it's tough to really have too much positive to talk about with Kutter Crawford.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because both with the pitchers we're talking about today, you wanted more from them. And then you did see that potential. And I feel like I've been saying the word potential for the last 3 or 4 episodes, just constantly saying that word. And you saw what they can bring to this team, but you just wanted more. It left much to be desired, and it just left fans wanting to be like, okay, when are they going to do this whole turnaround thing? When are they going to make it worth our while? But Crawford did have, he flashed what he could be for this team. But he's been at one point in July, I think he was one of the Red Sox best pitchers at one point. So again, we saw what he can do and what he can bring. You just wanted more. And through that stretch in July, you wanted to see that be replicated. I mean, he was going into the 6th inning. He was striking out batters. He looked like he was in complete control, and he said he was getting used to starting and everything. But then after that, it just kind of went downhill, and you're like, what the heck? Bring July Kutter Crawford back. It was like, bring the June Red Sox back. Like that's the feeling that I had with Kutter Crawford.
Well, just to paint a picture for most fans who, especially, the glimpses that you saw from Kutter Crawford, that wasn't the first time Red Sox fans saw him. They saw him in 2021, where he sort of came out of nowhere, starting for Nick Pivetta after Pivetta had to be taken out due to COVID-19. And it was interesting. I believe it was Zach Kelly told this story about, how Kutter sort of, heard the news that he was being called up, and, he ended up doing okay for just getting thrown into the game. I believe he allowed 4 earned runs, but most fans, sort of had, as I mentioned, optimism that maybe they could see a similar, more of a refined Kutter Crawford. And, we did see glimpses of him getting comfortable here and there. But the one thing that he really struggled with was his command. It seemed like every single time he was out there, yes, he had some games, where he would shove, but, the command really caught up with him. And, we saw multiple games where he had, 3, 4, 5 walks. And especially when you stack those up and you allow, guys to get on base, not only through walks, but also getting hits, you're going to allow a lot of earned runs. And, especially looking at the numbers, I was trying to find some optimism here for his splits. And I was hoping, when you saw the starter and the reliever splits, it was going to be some silver lining upon it. But, as a starter, 5.43 ERA over 12 games, and then 5.63 over 9 games out of the bullpen.
Yeah. It's funny that you see these numbers when they're starter and when they're reliever. Starter and reliever, and how they can be so different or how they can be so similar. I just feel like, I mean, for Crawford, I don't think he showed enough to make the 40-man roster, but I feel like he still wasn't 100% ready. And I feel that way about a lot of the pitchers and some players that we saw last year, to no fault of the Red Sox. I mean, you have to go back to the front office to place blame there, but I think we saw enough out of Crawford where I'd feel comfortable with him on the roster. Not like super, super confident, but I'd be comfortable enough. I mean, he also had that game again during that nice stretch in July where he threw 6 scoreless innings against the Rays. Alex Cora just left him in too long. He needed like 82 pitches, 83 pitches to get through that really tough Rays lineup. So like I said, we saw enough there where I think fans could be comfortable with him, but not someone where he's not going to get you excited with, especially with all the work that needs to be done on this pitching staff, starter and bullpen. I'm having a bad brain day with starting and bullpen apparently, but you look at the numbers overall, it's a small sample size, but it's big enough where you're like, okay, I think there's much more to be improved upon. But as we've talked about, like several times on this podcast, that I mean, he's on this roster, but will his leash be short? Will the Red Sox actually go get help when in pitching, or will they be like, well, Crawford showed enough, Winckowski showed enough, Bayo showed enough, where we're gonna not even look into pitchers? I don't think that's going to be the case, but it just goes back to there's a big enough sample size there. But the Red Sox fans want and deserve more from their pitchers, from their team, from this front office. I don't think Crawford gets them excited, whether he's a starter or a reliever, because that ERA, it's not great, obviously, especially as a reliever. But I still think that there's a ton of potential there. It just comes down to patience with Red Sox fans, which I know that they don't have much anymore, and they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. So again, I liked what I saw in July from Crawford, and I think there is something there, but how long are we willing to be patient with this guy?
Right. And, he ended up finishing the season over 77 innings, 5.47 ERA with a 4.34 FIP. And, it's with both Winckowski and Kutter, I think you could really put them in the bag. You could even put Bayo in this same category prior to when he started to figure it out. It was just too early. And it was mainly due to the lack of viable depth, especially when those injuries did arise. And, a lot of these guys were brought up and, sent down and brought up again mainly because those injuries arose and the Red Sox needed to fill in holes that they had due to all these injuries happening abundantly throughout July. And, it was interesting too, sort of one thing that I didn't get. And, I believe this was the game that you and I went to, but I remember I went to the Winckowski game. I think it was the one that you and I went to, but and Kutter was on the mound, and it was right when he got sent back down, and he ended up allowing, I believe it was 6 to 7 earned runs. And then his next start ended up playing Seattle and ended up pitching 5 innings, 1 hit, no earned runs, 4 walks, and 7 strikeouts. It's incredible to think a guy down in AAA, massively different competition, ended up allowing 6 to 7 earned runs, and then a week later throws a 1-hitter against a team that went to the ALDS. Like, it kind of crazy to believe, but I really think it's the comfortability, the confidence. But I would love to understand sort of what he fixed, how he felt different between those 2 starts.
Baseball is so weird. We've seen it with so many players. Just it is, and I think that when you get sent back down to Worcester, no matter the reason, there's probably some like, oh, that sucks. Like, probably a little bit of, there's probably motivation to be better, but there's probably still some doubt. Like, even if he knew he was going back down, you're still getting sent back down because you were a plan B, or because you didn't pitch as well or execute as well as the team wanted you to. Like, you're there because not just because you're good enough, it's because they needed you there, because there's no depth on this team and everyone's getting injured, everyone's getting sick, and it just was a bad time to be a Red Sox fan last year. But I really like that Pedro Martinez is going to be working with Crawford this offseason and spring training. So hopefully that is a good sign. I think that anytime you can work with Pedro, I think is obviously fantastic. And I think if Pedro wants to work with you, I think then he's seeing something that maybe you and I aren't seeing, that maybe the fans aren't seeing. But I don't think Crawford is bad. Like, I don't think there's any reason for us to give up on him and be like, what the heck? Like, this guy is useless. I don't think that's that at all. I think, again, he just wasn't MLB ready. And that's no fault of his own. He just didn't get enough time in AAA. And and we've talked about this before, how we see people have all this success in AAA and somehow it just never manages to transition over to MLB. And then we kind of saw the opposite with Crawford with that start. And then he goes to Seattle and looks like a different pitcher. So I do think he's going to come into the season motivated. I think that he knows too that this pitching system just was not good for the Red Sox last year. And who doesn't want to be part of a winning Red Sox team? Who doesn't want to help this Red Sox team win? He wants to be a contributor. This is a pretty good year for him to prove that he can be on this team and be reliable and provide some stability, whether that's out of the bullpen or as a starter. I think it'll be out of the bullpen because I just think that starting rotation, with or without Eovaldi, if he comes back or not, is pretty much set.
Yeah, completely agree. And, it'll most likely be either as a long reliever, or I would like to see him as a short reliever too. Because the one thing that we saw from Crawford is he has the strikeout stuff. Yes. And with most guys coming up from the minors, they have a difficulty being able to fool batters, especially at the level that the majors is. And, K per 9, 8.46. And, we saw him multiple different starts. He had very impressive strikeout stuff. July 4th against Tampa Bay, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. Houston, World Series winner, 6 innings, 7 hits, 1 earned run, and 6 strikeouts. He can carve through a very deep lineup if he needs to, but it's just that consistency, getting confident on the mound. And I think that will just come from reps, and especially if you're able to utilize him as a short reliever out of the bullpen. I think that's the way that you got to go. And I think as well, the Red Sox need to figure out what is the future for Kutter Crawford if he is going to stay on the roster, and we continue to send him back and forth from AAA to the majors. Maybe we should just keep him in the bullpen. If that's where he's effective, don't keep on making him a starter and then up in the bullpen in the majors. Like, just allow him to get comfortable in that spot and preparing out of the bullpen. And because you get those routines of being a starter. And then when that gets out of whack and you try and go up against a whole nother competition, that's a whole different beast.
It is. And, we've talked to pitchers on this pod before about how it's different mentally, physically preparing for a start, whether as opposed to a bullpen, because you never know when you're going in as a reliever. When you're starting, like, the preparation is different. And that's another thing we've talked about is defining roles for players on this team. The Tanner Houcks, what is his role next year? Matt Barnes, what is his role next year? Garrett Whitlock, if you say he's going to be a starter, you have to stick with that, because we're not doing this Daniel Bard thing again, especially with someone who like Whitlock, we know he's got good stuff. And I'm team keep Whitlock in the bullpen. We know this by now, but I just think that you carve out a role for Crawford and you just stick with that for the year, unless people go down. Like, obviously people have to make spot starts. You use them as an opener, whatever. Things aren't always going to go according to plan, but you need to stick with it as much as possible, because then you're messing with their confidence, their routines, the mental aspect of the game, the physical aspect of the game, more so the mental. And I think that's, if you're not mentally right on the mound because of your preparation is off or whatever reason, you're going to have a bad outing. So the Red Sox, with Crawford, with a lot of players too, need to carve out roles for what they want on their team next year and where each person fits on that team. Because if you don't, it's going to be a mess like last year.
I think Josh Winckowski fits in that same exact category. And, we're going to be reviewing his 2022 season in our next segment. Before we do that, Lauren just wants to talk to you about BetOnline.
BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting, info, stats, and analysis, and as well as news. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional sport and amateur league out there, from football to basketball. The Celtics are atop the NBA standings as we're recording this. There's soccer. The World Cup is going on, esports, NHL. The Bruins are just running through the NHL like it's nobody's business. Everything and anything it can be found at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts.
So now on to Winckowski. Now, this was a little bit of a different bag than what we saw from Kutter Crawford. It seemed like once Winckowski first stepped onto Fenway Park and put on that Red Sox uniform and left Worcester, he just wasn't comfortable. And there wasn't a lot of times where you saw Josh Winckowski comfortable, other than when he was talking crap about another team's like stadium or something like that. I'll never forget. I think it was Wrigley Field. He was like, "This place isn't that great," and then he allowed after allowing like 6 earned runs to the Cubs. So I'm just like, all right, bro, you can drop the mic like that if you went out and shoved.
Yeah, it was. He had a weird attitude with the end, and there's something about taking the accountability, and we heard that from Nick Pivetta last year. We heard it from Rick Porcello. I bring up Rick Porcello a lot, but he always held himself accountable. Chris Sale holds himself accountable. There's something about that accountability that goes a long way with this. And when you're just like, oh, like it's not that great of a park, blah blah blah, and then you go out there and get shelled. It's just, what have you done to like think you can say something like that? And whatever, you can say whatever you want, but just know that people don't forget. The internet certainly does not forget. And it's never a good look when, like I said, when you can't hold yourself accountable. And if he was trying to be funny, I'd be like, oh, okay, like it just went over people's heads. But I think he was being 100% serious. And I'm like, maybe we should focus on the pitching and not hating on ballparks and like other teams, because you need to straighten yourself out if you want to be a good contributor to this team.
And, the one thing that I think we really saw from Winckowski, and I mentioned it with Crawford, is, Crawford seemed very able and comfortable striking out batters at the major league level. It was staggering looking at the Ks per nine for Winckowski. 5.63. That's in the majors, but in the minors, he had a 9.43. Those are two different, and it was very interesting to see Winckowski, especially at the beginning of the game. And once he started to get through that third part of the order, now you hear that so many times with young pitchers, and we heard that so much with Tanner Houck. He's just not able to get around that third part of the order. And when you look at just ERAs for Winckowski, it was pretty eye opening. First inning, 3.21, allowed 5 earned runs. Second inning, same thing. 3.21, 5 earned runs. He's identical in the first 2 innings. And then third inning, 15.80, 24 earned runs. That is 19 more earned runs than any of the first 2 innings that I had mentioned. That's, if you need an explanation why Josh Winckowski did not work out, he screws up in the third inning. Once it gets down the third round of the order, it's right in the numbers. It's pretty obvious. And so, I think he just needs a full season in AAA. You just gotta get him comfortable down there. And, he's another person, as we mentioned before, you need to define his role.
Yeah, you do. And I do think a full season in AAA, again, only like called up on an emergency basis kind of thing if there's like no other move to make. But I think a full season in AAA would do him really, really good, especially in his development. And when he was optioned in August, it was late August, he had from like August 20th, I think it was, from July 7th to August 20th, his ERA was 6.75. And it's not a big span there. A month span, he's probably making 3 starts, maybe 4. It's ugly. Like he's just getting lit up. And that third inning is just looking at that ERA is ridiculous. And yes, it's that, like you said, second, third time through the order, the batters are familiar with what he's going to throw. Maybe he was tipping pitches, but batters would figure him out and they took full advantage of that. And you can't do that. I mean, batters are always going to have their way with certain pitchers. We know this, but it's mind-boggling to look at the ERAs and to see what he did or what he really didn't do in the third inning, and that's execute. And I think we didn't see a lot of execution from a lot of pitchers last year, and especially Josh Winckowski. And I think too, being called up and called up and option several times throughout the season. I said this with Crawford. Like there's got to be something there mental too, where you're like, okay, like where am I gonna go today? Am I gonna stay in Worcester? Am I gonna be able to sleep in my own bed, or am I gonna go on the road somewhere else? And that, the preparation, when you can't prepare the way you are hoping to or the way you're used to, it messes up everything. But like Crawford, I just don't think he was MLB ready. And I'm very team, like, keep him in the minors until he gets everything right, because you want these guys to work out. Mm-hmm. Nobody is hoping for these guys to fail, but we don't want them to develop at the expense of the Red Sox. Like, we don't want to see them getting lit up at the expense of the Red Sox. So potential. There's definitely potential there, but figure it out before you earn a permanent spot on this roster.
And he was really just thrown into it. I'm looking at his career stats, and I honestly did not realize this. He's in 2021 made 21 starts in AA, and then he only made 2 in Worcester in 2021. And then so outside of that, he's only combined made 15 starts in AAA. He literally was there for 2 seconds before the Red Sox needed him. And so, a lot of the criticism that we make, it's just based on the numbers from the majors. But being able to see the full picture of this, not only with Crawford, but with Winckowski, like it really gives fans an idea of what you're going to get when you don't prepare a guy or develop a guy properly. And when you just throw him into a situation when he's not ready. And, in football or any other sport, it's next man up. But at the same time, when you're going into the majors with the amount of competition, separation from AAA and the majors, you just really need to prepare these guys and make sure with confidence that they're going to go up and be able to, at least get better over time. Winckowski had a lot of time to figure things out. We saw what happened with Brian Bayo. He looked awful to start out, but then he looked like a Cy Young candidate. But you just got to see that progression. You got to see guys getting better. And if you don't see that, send them right back down. And that's what we saw from Winckowski. Send up and down 6 different times. Make a decision. If it's not working out with him, give Connor Seabold another shot. Doesn't matter if he's already showed you what you see. Don't keep on hindering another guy's development just because he's not able, or you don't have enough depth to be able to fill out a good quality major league roster.
It's kind of like a catch-22, right? Because then Connor Seabold, it's like, well, if you're not going to call up Winckowski, you're going to call up Seabold, but he's not going to give you much better than Winckowski. And I don't know if that's really the term I'm looking for, and it's like, okay, so we're going to kind of hinder 2 people's development here. But it's funny you say, like, with the third inning with Winckowski, because on August 24th, I wrote an article and the headline is "Third Inning Got Best of Josh Winckowski and Red Sox Lost to Blue Jays." And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, so obviously, like, we're very aware of this third inning. Right. He gave up 6 earned runs on 6 hits over 2 2/3 innings. It was a 9-3 loss to the Blue Jays at Fenway Park. And there was an 8-run third inning that just put the Red Sox away. And it's I mean, the Blue Jays are a good team. There's like that goes without saying, but that third inning is his Achilles heel. And if that's going to be the same this year, just, put him in for the first 2 innings and then take him out for the third, or maybe put him in like the fourth inning where he had the .82 ERA. Maybe just use him, have him be a fourth inning guy, because he's pretty good in that fourth inning.
Exactly. They just got to figure out, both of these guys, where are they going to play? Where do we see this future? And, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see either of these guys on the major league roster until, August, September. I hope we honestly, no offense to either of these guys, but I hope the Red Sox field a very competitive depth chart to where they don't need any of these fill-in guys, and they're just able to steam ahead with a whole new, very competitive roster. But all we can do is hope and pray that something happens during the winter meetings or before then. But we're going to continue to stay positive and go into our last and final segment with the mental health man. Before we do that, I just want to take a second to talk to you about SimpliSafe. So if you thought about securing your home with home security but haven't been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Red Sox listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. And this is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Here's why I love it. Did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike nationally? That's why our friends at SimpliSafe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your SimpliSafe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. And also, in an emergency, they also have 24/7 professional monitoring agents, and they use their Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe. Don't miss the chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. This is their biggest discount of the year, so you don't want to wait. That's simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. So we're going to end this episode like we always do with the mental health minute. So especially, with the times going into the holidays, there's a lot of people who might be feeling lonely or might not have family around them to where they're able to enjoy, being around as many people as you are. So make sure to be cognizant and aware of just checking in on those people that, might be feeling alone, might have lost somebody recently in their life or something like that. Just send them a text that you're thinking of them. Just something small and short. I know that'll definitely make their day.
Yeah, I talked about this last week, just saying, it's the holidays. People are stressed. And sometimes this is the worst time of the year for people. Sometimes it's a lot of people's favorite time of the year. So it's just go the extra mile, be a little kinder. I have a friend right now who lost her mom 2 weeks ago. And, she got through Thanksgiving without her, and Christmas was her absolute favorite holiday. So it's going to be hard for her. And she's not, she's not going to be happy about celebrating Christmas. And I think of people like her where people, maybe someone's rude to her for whatever reason, or someone, just not, someone's stressed and just kind of giving some attitude where you don't really need to be giving attitude. And it's like, you just never know what someone is going through. And it's always, it's not going to kill you to sit there and maybe just like smile with someone or just be like, oh, how you doing? And passing. And if somebody gets your order wrong, your drink order wrong or something, just be patient and say, I'm so sorry but this isn't what I ordered. There's no need to berate anyone. We're all just out here trying to make a living. We're all just out here trying to survive each day. We don't need to make it difficult on another human being.
Amen. Couldn't have said it better. But, we greatly appreciate you tuning in each and every single day to the Locked On Red Sox podcast and for always supporting us. But we really does mean a lot. Kind of crazy coming up on my 1-year anniversary. We're going to do a little special thing for that. But as always, we greatly appreciate you making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen today and check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most, the biggest stories in sports go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure to follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Also, follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren. It's 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But we hope everybody has a great Monday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. But we'll end it how we always end it. Let's go Sox.